morning, Turfs Up Radio. Wayne Voles, Profits Unlimited, coming to you live from Louisville, Kentucky. Yes, indeedy. Oh, my goodness. We got a good show going today. It's Monday. Can you all believe it? Here we go. Rocking in another week, starting it off with July 7th. Hard to believe, hard to believe. Well, it's good morning to my buddy Mr. Smoking Joe and everybody else listening to us. Joe's off to a new and improved start this morning, and proud of him for that. And each and every one of you guys that may be trying something different and new, that's awesome. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. But yeah, we got a lot of things we're going to talk about today. I hope your Monday is off to a good start. Hope everybody got back to work and, out doing what you do, getting some good mowing in or landscaping in or ferting weed in or lighting, whatever it is that you do, hydraulics, welding, if you're my buddy Timmy and Robin down there in Nelson County, Kentucky. So a wide range, but just I hope everybody came back to work with 10 fingers and two eyes, a lot of weird things happen over the weekend, the 4th of July with all the fireworks and whatnot. So hope everybody is okay and that all went well. And it was the first time I've been home on July 4th in a long, long time, and was really kind of interesting. I didn't realize that. I don't know. Now I don't know if this is normal or if it was just this year or somebody did it, but somebody in our neighborhood, man, spent some real money on some nice fireworks. And I don't know. I guess I sat on my deck for 45 minutes watching fireworks, and I mean, nice stuff. I mean, and really nice. And there's a common area back behind the house, and really, really a nice display of fireworks went on. I'll say that, to say the least. So kudos to whoever that was, man. I know that wasn't inexpensive. The fireworks that they put on, they had a lot of money invested in that. So you guys that do fireworks understand that. I hadn't bought any for a long time just because we can't do them at the lake, So we don't buy any. But I know they're not cheap. They weren't cheap when I was buying them. So, but yeah, it was really nice, and had a good weekend. Had a great weekend actually, and Friday we grilled out a little bit and had some Nathan hot dogs. I don't know how many of you guys might have watched that Nathan's hot dog eating contest that they do up there at Coney Island, but it was crazy watching both the men and women's division of that, and how competitive that really is, man. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, those guys are professional eaters, no doubt about it, and do a lot of different things, traveling the circuit, if you will. And but it was amazing to see, like Joey. I can't think of his last name, but whatever his last name is, you know, he's just so much better and faster than everybody else. And I guess what I got to thinking about after I was watching this guy eat these hot dogs is, what do we do in our own business to be that much different and better than our competitors? There's competition for each and every one of us, right? I mean, that's the reality of it. But what are you doing to set yourself apart? And I mean, that Joey Chestnut, yeah, that's his last name, Chestnut. I mean, he is something when he comes to how good he is at his business, if you will. I mean, he was a third better than everybody else. And I mean, that's just a big number, big number. So not just the fact that he's eating more hot dogs or eating more whatever it is that they're eating there. There's a lot of different things that these guys go around, being competitive on chewing and eating and swallowing and that whole thing. But I don't know. I just did. I got to thinking about that, and like his closest competitor was
45.
45, and he had 70. I mean,
I
it's
didn't get to
crazy.
see Michael Jordan in his prime, but I can imagine it would be like that.
Just
Dominance.
These guys knew they were playing for second. And, I mean, that's okay. I mean, one of them even said that in something Tab and I saw before it actually came on, but they were talking to one of these guys and they're like, well, how do he says, well, I don't know. Someday somebody's going to beat him. But he said, realistically, we're all here going for second. And there's nothing maybe wrong, I guess, with that mindset. I mean,
I mean, to a certain degree, you just know when somebody is better than
yeah,
you.
yeah, you go out.
Especially in a sporting event. With business, it's a little bit different because, hey, I can find a different niche or I can sell to the same customer with different benefits and like, but when it comes to like a true event of there's going to be one like that, I mean, it's pretty, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But, it's a good mindset to have to remain positive,
Yeah.
even though it goes back to what I talk about a little bit, Daniel, is, you know, small or large, just because you're small doesn't mean you can't be good. And these guys are obviously professional eaters as well,
Yeah.
and making a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
They just can't get him in the hot dogs for, whatever that looks like. So, but yeah, good morning, Darren. Good morning, Aaron. Good morning to you guys that have texted me and said you're listening. Aaron's out selling lawn renovations today. It's awesome. Good. Glad to hear it, man. It's that time of the year for sure. We're all out there chugging away at it and one at a time, you know. Uh, yeah, Mike makes a really good point here, Daniel. He says they just set realistic goals,
Yeah.
you know. I mean,
Well, I mean, if you look at Joey Chestnut in the early 2000s, he set the record, I think, at 50. I think is what somewhere around there when he was in his 20s. And I think a lot of those guys other than him were in their 20s. So I mean, you could look at that and go, okay, hey, well, maybe I'm on a trajectory to be as good as he was. He has 20 years on me or something like that.
right.
You know, you
Yeah,
could
just not there
could
yet kind of thing. But anyway, those Nathan hot dogs were pretty good.
yeah,
I ain't gonna lie. And I don't know, something we figured out. What was it, like 20,000 calories or something?
something like that. Yeah. It was
Because it
something
was
like
210 calories to a hot dog, I
I think
think,
250.
or 250.
Yeah, and then
And he had
120
70.
for
And
the bun or so.
yeah, it was crazy. What happens with all those calories? Your body couldn't process that, right?
No, no, you can't process that much. Probably the max, just right off the top of my head, would maybe be a few thousand you could process and actually like utilize in the moment and then store. And then the other part, I mean, you are storing quite a bit of it, but like you just that much food at once is
A lot.
more than your body's
Yeah.
supposed to take on.
So it's kind of like you guys that put on too much work, you know?
There you go.
You know, you it's it's useless work when you can't get it done. You can't get it done efficiently.
Yeah.
And that's something that, we want to talk a little bit about today as well. But before we get into that, I wanted to give a shout out to all the families and that have been devastated with anything over the weekend. But certainly the flood victims that we had in Texas, I wanted to cover that before we actually get into our show. That was crazy, a crazy weather event. And actually, I'm going to see if Brett or Matt can hop on with me on my show Friday
Mm-hmm.
and get some input on that. So I emailed them and, just to, hear about that. But, something, just like they were talking about on TV yesterday, and we're going to leave it alone for now. But they were talking about, somebody, everybody's always looking for somebody to be at fault, and maybe nobody was at fault, realistically. I mean, that's the other side of it because evidently, 1 o'clock or so, they did put out a flash flood watch. And then, a couple hours later, it went to a warning and then an emergency. So and they did tell them they were going to have potentially 10 inches or more of rain. So, so it's not that it's anybody to blame. It's just a terrible event. at probably one of the worst possible times it could have happened there overnight,
Mm.
you know. But just a big shout out, and I hope they find everybody that's missing. And we're going to leave it at that for now. So, um, other than that, last night I was watching a cool show on 60 Minutes. I don't know if any of you guys watch that or not, but I was watching 60 Minutes. And Corey, if you're listening to this, or if you're watching this on or listening to it on a replay on a podcast, man, I'm curious because you're right around that Chesapeake Bay area for sure. But there was this place called Smith Island, and that they were talking about, and they were talking about these cakes, Smith Island cake, and the origin of this cake. And basically, quickly as a summary, Smith Island is a an island in the Chesapeake Bay, evidently area. I'm not sure exactly where, but because I came in on it just a few minutes after they were going, but this island is eroding away. Basically, is what it amounts to, Daniel. Through the sea height, you know,
Mm.
and so they're it's not a vacation destination. It's people live on this island. It's not very big, but they got this cake that this lady was talking about. She said she makes them and sends them all over the world, and she said she doesn't even charge for them up front, which I thought was crazy. She says, "Well, no, I don't take any credit cards or anything like that." But after the show, Tabitha and I Googled it, and I Googled it again this morning. Quite honestly, it's like a 7 or an 8 layer cake, a yellow cake that they use fudge frosting, chocolate frosting on. And let's see, what's it say here? I did look at. Let me tell you what it says. The cake is a symbol of community and togetherness, meant to remind the men of the community that the left behind. That part I'm not sure about, but when they went out to do Waterman's, they called them Waterman's family. So I missed that part of the show on it, but evidently they would make these cakes in honor of the guys that were going out and doing this work basically at this time of the year to let them know that people hadn't forgot about them. That hey,
Mm.
we're still thinking about you here. So I probably just really butchered that all up, but that's was the reality of it. So um, good deal, Craig. Glad to have you in with us, my friend. Glad to have you in with us, and I hear you, Dan. Dan said it's his favorite word, cake. So, but yeah, I'm going to order one of these things. They look really cool. I was reading a little bit about the origin of them, and they were saying on this island they were late to get electricity, basically, and so they were baking these cakes. And this is a tall cake. It's like an 8 layer cake, but real thin layers. But they said one of the reasons maybe that they did these 8 small layers to this yellow cake was because they were cooking them in wood burning stoves,
Mm.
and they had probably, I think they used the word probably actually, or would have a hard time getting that thick of a cake done,
Yeah,
but they could get a whole lot of thin ones done. So
makes sense.
I don't know. I'm gonna check one out. They're anywhere from 65 to $100, depending on where you order them. They do have this one bakery there on the island. It's called Smith Island Baking Company, and where they do bake and ship these things. So goes back to business, Daniel.
Yeah,
Wonder how many we sold because of that
probably a lot.
airing of that show.
Yeah, can
You know,
imagine they might have a back order going.
probably so. So we'll see how all that goes. But I'm looking forward to doing that. I hear you, Dan. I hear you, Corey. Count me in. Actually, I was going to ask you, Corey, about those things, man. Are you familiar with Smith Island? I really had a note here if you chimed in with us this morning to ask you about that. But if you're familiar with that at all, or the cake, so I don't know. We're definitely going to order one and see what it's like and what it's all about. They say they ship fine, and they say they do compress a little bit in shipping.
Yeah.
That was when you go onto their website. Before you can go anywhere on a website, you got to go to terms and conditions,
Mm,
and it tells you about what might happen.
right.
So, of
And I
course,
was that happened to me yesterday. I was looking at a website and they really wanted you to know this information every time you clicked on a new page of their website, it came up.
really.
You had to exit out of this little box.
So they were making sure that you knew
Whatever they wanted to tell you.
whatever they wanted to tell you. So, but Corey hadn't heard of it either. So
Huh.
there we go. Well, by golly, that's interesting. Let's move on. Let's move on, Daniel, to something that more serious note here, if you will, and that certainly is following you guys today. Goodness gracious, excuse me. I will make it through my show, but this drainage is crazy. Aaron had a great show this morning, followed up by Eric and Jennifer and Daniel, and here we go. Here we go with my show here on Profit Time. But Aaron was talking about he had a great opportunity to get with his family and go do a little canoeing or whatever it was in those little things. I guess it was canoes,
Little float.
float,
Floating.
kind of float. But they had a great time, and Eric and Jennifer had their, um, I guess, honeymoon. Went to Charleston, South Carolina,
Yeah.
and I believe is where he said they were at, and they had a great time down there. And then your show, Daniel, we're going to reiterate that we just had that one, but and then Darren's following up today after me. So, but what I wanted to talk about today a little bit was talking about business a little bit in perspective. And you guys may have seen this. If you have, bear with me. If not, we'll talk about it a little bit when it comes to, your business and how you advertise and how you sell your business, and not sell your business literally, but sell your services. And I saw something online, and it's this older fella sitting there selling watermelons. And it's kind of funny how these selling and advertising jokes go back to watermelons. I remember that in college from an advertising class. Not this specific thing, but guy thought he was going to solve his problems by getting a bigger truck, and selling more watermelons in his business. But in this case, excuse me, guy's got a sign outside. It says, or on his watermelon stand, it says, and he's an older fella, and it says, one watermelon for $3, three watermelons for $10. And so young guy comes up there and he looked at it and he gave the guy $3 for a watermelon. And the old man told me, he said, yeah, that's fine, $3. And the young guy kind of smirked at him, and then he bought another one and paid him $3. And he bought another one and paid him $3. And as he was walking away carrying his three watermelons, he was kind of laughing and shaking his head. And he said, hey, old man, I just got three watermelons for $9 instead of 10. Maybe business isn't your strong suit. And the old man watched him walk away and chuckled to himself and said, people are really funny. They just keep buying three watermelons thinking that they're outsmarting me. And that, where's that mindset on both sides? Let's talk about the mindset of your advertising.
Yeah.
On both sides for a minute on that.
Yeah.
The old man was selling three instead of one. Kind of when I first read that, it made me think about something my dad used to say about always giving your customers a choice between something and something else. So he did say, hey, one for three or three for 10.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Moby Dick fish here. Katie, you remember that the fried green tomatoes? I do because I saw it yesterday. That last week. They still got it up there. They've got a half order for whatever the price is, and it says it's 3, or a full order, which is 5, and it's double the price.
Hmm.
So it's the same scenario, man. Just get 2 half orders.
Yeah.
But why? Let's look at both sides of that, Daniel, because you can analyze that good, and then we'll figure out where we're going with it. I know where we're going with it, but what do you think? I mean,
I
the buyer thinks they got over, and the seller thinks they got over.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to a little bit about what you say about definition of a good deal. They both feel like they both got a
Yeah,
good deal, which is good. Um, I think the seller has forgotten his ego a little bit, saying, "Okay, I'm going to make this guy feel like, or make this consumer feel like they're the smart one here. They're outsmarting me. I don't need to be. Why do I need to be, the smart one? I just need to be the one that sells it."
and we talk about that a lot. Setting your ego aside.
Yeah. When I say smart, of course, not necessarily literally intelligent because you do want to be that, but like, let them feel like they won that transaction, if you will. It also, I think, thinking about it, it makes me think about like when, specifically when we were getting this bathroom looked at. And it's like, okay, here's the cost of doing this, here's the cost of doing that. It really just makes more sense to get both of these things done at once because you're gonna, just playing with the numbers and having, maybe you only need one watermelon or one service, but how about this? If you take this extra service, it's only gonna be this much more, whatever per month or whatever. Versus if you got this done now and this done later, it's going to cost you double or, whatever. Just playing with the numbers within your own business. So you can obviously still make the profit that you want, but you can upsell. I think that's the part of this here is this guy's upselling through not deceptive numbers, but like he's upselling through making people feel like they're getting a good deal. And so, how are you upselling within your business? How are you making people feel like they're getting a good deal for services they might not need, but they want?
Yeah, it's because they want a good deal.
Yeah,
And I think customers and consumers in general want to feel like they've made a good deal.
yeah. I mean,
Whatever you buy.
yeah, I think it's
I
like
think that's human nature.
yeah, money isn't money. Like a number isn't a number. It's relative to the value that you're putting on it. If you think, okay, well, it's going to cost me $200 a month for this, but I'm going to get four times the value and only pay $500 a month. Well, that's an extra $300 income to you, and that customer feels like they're getting additional value, and so that $500 now becomes in their mind less money to spend.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I like it. I mean, it's not deceptive on the seller's point at all.
Yeah, it's just psychology, really. It's just
It's the psychology side of it, and I don't know. To your point, Daniel, I think we ask ourselves, what are we doing to upsell our customers into something more than what they want? Not just to sell them something,
yeah,
but to increase their
experience, their customer satisfaction. Right.
yeah. It's kind of like how many times don't you get called to a house to either do a landscape or do a mow job or do a fert and weed, and there's something else there that can be done,
Right.
you know? And are you taking that opportunity to upsell that account or not? Or are you just bidding the work? That's one really cool thing with our software we're using now. We can do a lot of optional things just right through our same proposal that doesn't overinflate the total until they pick that option, you know. But we can put it in there for them, so it gives you a really good chance to suggest a sell or upsell, whatever you want to call it, depending on whose course you've been to. But the reality of it is, it gives you an opportunity to sell more in the same amount of time, roughly, as what it's going to take you to sell one thing to somebody. So we're going to talk about that in depth here in just a second. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the estimating process and how, we go about, or how you go about upselling or giving customers a little something more than what they wanted. And, some things that I've learned already just in landscape lighting and holiday lighting than potentially what could or should be done. So you guys stay right where you're at. We'll be right back with more Profit Time. Welcome back to Profit Time here on Turfs Up Radio. Daniel, appreciate you hopping on again today with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And I wanted to talk about estimates. We kind of started touching on it a little bit last week and ran out of time. We started it at the end, but I want to talk about, I'm going to call them drive-by estimates. And we all know what a drive-by estimate is. And I think we're guilty of doing too many of those as an industry. But maybe something that's very similar to the drive-by estimate. And this is what I want to get you guys' opinion on that are listening to us today is, are you running into consumers more and more that really aren't concerned with interaction for the sales process for things like mowing, fertilization, weed control, even holiday lighting, uh, gosh, any service that doesn't require them to pick something out, if you will.
Yeah.
It just seems like.
I'm in that boat as a consumer.
Are you?
Yeah. I like that. I mean, I'll it also, like you said, it depends exactly what it is. But if it's give me your address, give me your one, like whatever small ones that you want. Like if it was lighting, do you want what color? Let's just say, set a date to come do it or come out to see it or whatever. Hit the button and then you get an email confirmation that says, "Hey, your blank has been scheduled. Your date for this or that has been scheduled. We'll see you there. We'll text you before we get there, whatever." That to me is more streamlined. I don't have to worry about, are they going to, answer, or do I have to call them back, or do I have to make several calls, or it's just, it seems to me more as a consumer, a little bit less like it's on my time, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
I made a really good point similar to that today, Daniel, when we were talking about it, whereas even people that we talk to when, they call in, she answers the phone, she's talking to them. There's really, when it comes to a basic service, pretty much even the phone conversation is, other than name, address, how'd you hear about us, those kind of things is, do you have a gate? Do you have a pet? An outside pet? So it's really, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm used to doing it the other way that I feel weird that a consumer really likes doing it the way you're talking about, with that drive-by estimate mindset, if you will. And some of it's not even a drive-by. A lot of it now is just strictly, Google Earth.
Yeah.
Look at it, measure it, or some type of software, that you can look at a property, get the square footage.
Yeah.
But there still is a lot of things you miss.
As the consumer, though, you have a much different perspective on drive-by estimates, right? Like, you don't care if their price is X and it's based on a drive-by or it's based on a get my wheel out and measure the yard or go to Google Earth, right? Like, you just care that the price is this. If that's within the budget, then that's great. If there's somebody else that's cheaper or whatever, if that's what you're looking for more, then that's what you're going to base it off of. You're not basing it off of, well, this company's cheaper because what they did a drive-by, whereas this company's more expensive, but they did this. I don't think that that's going through their head.
So, and probably not. And the reality of it is, if you ask yourself, well, whose fault is it if something goes sideways? I think it's the business.
Yeah.
It's our choice to decide to do the estimating process, how we're going to do it. If it's online, or if it's, physically, hey, somebody wants a landscape. Now, no, landscape is one thing that we will not do without an on-site visit.
Yeah.
We can't give them justice or us justice
Yeah.
without that. Oh, so
And I
there,
think people spending more money probably appreciate that on hands-on process a little bit more because it feels like that's their job's getting a little bit more care.
yeah, and I do think they care about that because, when I say they care about it, the consumer cares about, in most cases, when it comes to landscaping or even lighting, landscape lighting, I want to talk to somebody. You
Yeah.
know, I want to find out what they want, what they don't want, what they like, what they dislike. Because there's too much involved in something like that. Now, I can agree 100% that when it comes to mowing and fert and weed and maybe even some aeration and overseeding, uh, that's fine. I've kind of grown into where I'm okay with the new process on that,
Yeah.
for most, including us. All right. But I still like looking somebody in the eye and talking to them. I mean, I personally think it just helps solidify the relationship potentially with somebody. Now, that's just my 2 cents worth. I'm curious, you guys that are listening to us, shoot us a text. Let me know what your thoughts all are on it. I'm just curious. 502 550 8307. 502 550 8307. Or, do you like to go look at them, or would you rather just look at it on Google Earth or some other platform and send an estimate out and put the work on?
Yeah. Well, I think there can be a hybrid approach too, where it's like the customer can make you can make it easier for the customer to sign up online, and then you can go do an estimate in person, um, like actually going and looking at the property if that's what's needed.
Correct.
Like there can be both of those in the same situation. Um, Now I've never shopped for a lawn service, but I know things like trash service, right? Like the person never came out and had to say, okay, well, let's meet up so we can talk about your trash,
Yeah.
right? Because it's similar to mowing. It's like, okay, well, I mean, it's a little bit even easier in a sense because it's just bring your trash cans to the yard. It doesn't matter how big anything is or whatever. But it's similar in the sense that like, or fert and weed even. So I never met with my trash people, but like I said before, when I wanted potentially my bathroom to be remodeled, they came out. I mean, they came out 3 times.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends on the scope of the work, the price that's going to be involved, the intensity of options, all those kind of things that
And
really
it
get
does. I,
into it.
I really do think it boils down to the service. And that's pretty much what everybody's saying on their text. You know, um, Seth makes a really good point that, and that's true too. Mike will touched on that side of it too. But Seth said, as professionals, we can bring a lot of things up that they won't think about when it comes to landscaping.
Yeah.
And that's where I do think, some of your higher ticketed items that require, multiple plants or multiple materials, there is a lot that needs to go into it. And when you don't take the time to do it, and
It's
when I
going to
say
cost more time.
it's going to cost more time and more effort,
Yeah.
and then, well, I thought you liked those
Yeah, I
kind
think
of
the whole
thing.
point of doing what we're talking about is to save time and make the experience better, right? But if it doesn't do either of those things, then there's no sense in doing it. And I don't think there's yet a good way to do what we're talking about in a landscape renovation style project where, new plants and do this, do that, take this out, don't take that out. I think you're not saving any time or making the customer experience any better by streamlining those in the same way.
Yeah. Mike said he he prefers uh, to do a personal estimate. Okay. But he said also he doesn't hardly meet anybody on mowing estimates. So I really do think that mowing, because Katie does most of the mowing and fert from right here, right, Katie? I mean, you're doing a very large percentage of that here, and we're not getting pushback from uh, our crews or time taken to do the job or pricing. But Katie's really good about getting everything measured up accurately too. So I think that's the key. If you're going to do the quote unquote drive by estimate, only the new drive bys on a computer, and some of it's still done uh, in a vehicle. But if you're doing it on a computer, just make sure that you're verifying what you can verify.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a lot of things that you don't see because we all know it. It's speed. It's the speed of the process from lead to the close of the sale. That this morning, hell, we had one, y'all. 22 minutes after we got the email, this guy had already found somebody supposedly. And I mean, I'd emailed him back saying, because it was two commercial facilities that they wanted some mowing done on. One of them was sitting in the parking lot of a Walmart. So I couldn't tell what was theirs versus what the guy mowing for Walmart uh, would be mowing. So I asked him if he could uh, give us a call and or send us a picture of what their property lines are. Excuse me. So, and by the time I'd sent that out to him, which was 22 minutes from the time we got the email, he said, "Hey, I appreciate your follow up. I've already contracted with somebody." That's pretty quick. I mean, somebody either was really on the ball or somebody just looked at it and said, "Hey, we're going to mow this or this," or maybe he was telling a fib too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to spend the time and effort to
Do that. Yeah.
to do that for us, and it'd be one of those things that would be a problem. It ain't our fault, but it is our problem. But realistically, it is our fault for not gathering the true scope of the job prior to submitting a price on it.
Yeah.
So
I think that last case scenario is the case scenario in which you as the business truly do win, because if he's not willing to do that at the beginning, as time goes by, he's probably going to become less and less responsive, and or the other way where he has a problem, he wants it solved now, you have a question and it's a week later.
right, and Mike makes a good point here too. He says some people like to meet just so they can be a micromanager, and I believe that 100%. To be the case in it, but let's see. Corey said for him, after visiting a person and spending time with them, the rejection is a bit worse than the drive by. And that makes sense. I don't know if you're joking or serious, Corey, but the 100%, you feel like you get a little bit invested in this person, relationship wise, and talking to them. And but hell, I do remember the days when I would look at everything and probably was harder to do then because I was production, I was sales, both, but I'd want to look at everything, and because what you can get into a lot of times, or not a lot of times, that's probably unfair, but when you're talking about the services that we feel comfortable in bidding without seeing a lot of times is, you know, the accessibility to the backyard. Because, what if they've had a fence put up? You know, I mean, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but you can look at something on Google Earth and now they've got a fence up that you didn't see, you didn't ask about, and you're counting on cutting this back part of this property with a larger piece of equipment, but you get there and you're going to have to put a 36 in the backyard. I mean, that's potentially so. That's something we got to look at. It's what you don't get to see sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to having a good set of questions. Your lead sheet that we actually have within the profit circle. I think we put in there a while
Yeah,
back, is I think we put our lead sheet in there as an example for people to use to get the proper information and ask the questions on a regular, protocol, for
right.
what you're asking everybody.
Yeah, just so you don't forget something.
Mm-hmm.
And know that the suggestive selling side of that even is, and that's honestly something we could even get better at here at Wayne's Lawn Service, is the optional service. It's almost like if somebody gets a mowing or fert or vice versa estimate, we should almost send the other if it's in a, um, especially when it comes to mowing, certainly add fert because we service a lot of areas in fertilization weed control that we don't mow in though. So that would just be on a per basis thing. But again, it goes back to the suggestive selling side of things. And so whether you miss it on the square footage or the type of grass, the quality of the grass, do they have an irrigation system? Those are things that potentially you can ask on the phone. But when somebody sends a form fill through, and it's like our form fill. I don't know what yours looks like on your website, but you can't have too much on there that's mandatory,
Right.
I don't think Daniel's going to want to answer, 15 questions to get an estimate, about do you have an irrigation? What size fence or gate do you have on your fence? I mean, those are basic things. Do you have a dog? Is it an inside dog, outside dog? Is it, are there any?
I think there are ways you could make that happen and people wouldn't be too off put by it as long as it's easy. As long as it's easy. As long as it's
Yes, no's.
not necessarily yes, no's. I mean, that could be one way to do it. Um, but people, if I think the main thing might not be the response, but the question. If it's a super long question, somebody might be like, "Oh God, I got to read all this."
Right.
So if you can make them very short statements or questions, do you have a dog or do you have an outside animal? Do you have this? Keep it very short. Um, I think that would keep people engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe moving along. And maybe, I don't know, do you feel like that's something we need to do? And more importantly, is that something you guys listen to us? Is that something that you need to do? I'm just curious what for you guys that have a website, and hopefully most of you do, and you've got a form fill on it. What kind of questions are you asking on that form fill? I think that's it. I mean, because I know we don't get resistance on the phone from people when we ask those questions,
Right.
but I just don't know. The email's about the only resistance we get if we're going to get
Sometimes, yeah.
any, and that's not that much. But I don't know. Where's the line, Daniel? Where do you think the line is? And this may go back to customers' mindset too. I think it does really. Where's the line between the customer that looks at it and, like you said, and says, "Hey, these guys are really streamlined in getting these estimates out. They don't need to come out here to get me an estimate." Or the other side of that, where the customer says, "Well, they don't even want to spend the time to come out here and look at it. They don't care."
Personal preference,
Do
and
you
maybe there's a.
do you think that's more of a older age
I
group
think it
that wants to
is.
see somebody?
I think generally speaking, yes. I think most people these days, it's like, let me just continue doing what I'm doing, and let me have the 5 minutes that it takes to fill this out. Don't have to worry about doing anything else, and then it's done. I think most people nowadays are just more. They just prefer more of a less, uh, I guess maybe interactive approach.
Yeah. But why do you think those same people then get frustrated if something's not done the way they thought it was going to get done?
Because they, in their head, in my head, I'm thinking, well, if this is the way that the business has set it up, then they have set it up in a way that should be that should lead to things getting done correctly. As a consumer, if you set a process within your business, that means you've thought about how to make it work. So if it doesn't work, then why'd you set that process up? So now I'm kind of like,
So let's look at fertilization and weed control for a second. Somebody calls in here or sends a form fill through. Okay. We look them up and We look at their property, whether it looks good or bad, either way. Okay. If it looks bad, then hey, we do this. If it looks good, we do that potentially. But let's just say it looks really good on Google Earth or whatever platform you're using, but it's really not. But if I'm on site looking at that, I can tell that person that if they're there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or I can know, or I know that hey, I need to bring it up in the email back to Daniel
right.
that
And I
hey,
think that's what people want more of than let me be there with them. Hey, let's go ahead. I'll tell you all the information. Set up a time for you to come out, and I can do whatever. I can be at the zoo or I can be at work or whatever. And then you're going to come out, look at it, and then send me the information that I need for to move forward with this process.
so that I think is the home run.
I
I
think
I
that's
think that's the real answer. They want the peace and mind of a secure and accurate estimate by doing an on-site evaluation, but don't want to give up the free time in a lot of cases
right.
for something as simple as mowing, fert and weed, hedge trimming,
Yeah,
mulching, that type service. So
I think so. Yeah. And some people won't even care that if you do or don't come out for some things, or maybe everything other than like the landscaping stuff. But
right.
some people are just going to be like, and maybe I'm in the same boat. And it depends too on, how laid back you are versus how much of a micromanager you are. But I'm in the boat of, yeah, I want this to be done right, but I'm also more lenient and I'm also more like, give it some time to work, or okay, the first one wasn't great, let's give it two or three more cuts to see what happens, to see if things, they're whatever. So I think it just is also personality driven on what somebody both wants and how lenient they're going to be. Like if you did do a virtual assessment and then that turns into a few small problems at the beginning.
Yeah. How many of you guys do virtual assessments? Curious. Doug, if you're listening, I'm curious if you do virtual assessments or if everything you do is on site or what it may be. So I don't know. I can talk myself in and out of this. Could be one of our new
Would you rather's?
would you rather's.
Yeah.
For our would you rather series. Would you rather go on site?
Would you rather do 100% on site or 100% virtual?
That's a good question. Let's do that because yeah, that could lead to something. I'm curious. What would you guys rather do, just for the fun of it? 100% virtual or 100% on site?
I think probably the amount of time you're going to save by doing 100% virtual is going to surpass the amount of money or time you're going to lose by doing 100% in person or whatever,
So
on
the
site.
sales of virtual are going to cover the. I think you're right. You would probably, especially
On the realistic
on the
services.
realistic services that you could do virtually.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, absolutely. So I think I don't know. I kick around this thing and I have for years about what's a better way of doing it, and I think for us certainly, and yeah, we'll do that. Let's do that on the Would You Rather series. But speaking of
And if you have any other would you rathers for especially out in the field, send those in. That would be, I want
what's
some.
that?
What, like, for people listening, would you rather do this or do that? Specifically for out in the field.
Yeah,
Would you rather push mow an acre, or would you rather dig X amount of foot hole with a spade, whatever.
yeah. I've got Mike said in a perfect world, 100% online, but God, you just don't get a chance to talk to somebody though. See, and I mean, and I don't know. Absolutely, do virtual assessments. Seth says helps gauge my expectations before doing it in person. as a consumer I would do in person. So let's see. Fred says 100% on site. I'm there to look at other service options that I can sell. Just what we were talking about earlier. That's what I like about that. It
Yeah.
gives you the opportunity to really see the job site in real time.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what your niche is. Like if you're a mostly mowing company who's mowing yards in a lower or low to middle income range, then maybe that's not as realistic as a spot for you to do an upsell. So there's no sense in trying and going out to do the upsell. But if your niche is middle to middle high income range, then there is more potential for that. So going on site for everything would actually be better.
Hmm. See, Mike says he also thinks it depends on the size of the business. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, the size of the job, you know, I think that does play heavily into it, to say the least. And speaking of what would you rather do? Uh, let's see. Says, I have a story I'll tell you about later that was first about mowing, but ended up being a full maintenance account.
There you go.
There you go. And those are some things sometimes you might not find out otherwise. But hey, right after us today, we got King Darren Gruner going to talk about solid tips to be the landscape hero for your clients. So he's going to break it down into 5 for discussion time's sake today. He said so. But, like anything, stay tuned. He's got 5 solid tips to be the landscape hero for your clients. And I don't know, maybe he'll elaborate on this a little bit. But I think we're all on the same page that when it comes to landscaping, for sure, um, lighting,
Yeah.
just in my opinion, what's your opinion on that, Kyle, on lighting, real quick? On site, it's almost got to be on site for lighting, doesn't it? I mean, landscape lighting. Well, yeah, consultation. I mean, you can look at the front of a house and try to do something, but, or
Well, I mean,
whatever.
going back to like what Darren said too about being there at night to see where specifically their lighting needs are because of indoor lighting and all the other factors that go into that. Like that's a big one for landscape lighting in particular.
Yeah,
I think does anything where there's going to be a design.
yeah, and I think that this is one of those cases where it really is okay to have a policy in play for some things,
Yeah.
and get through the busy season. It's like us right now. Our lead generation's not anything like it is in the spring, So now maybe you can take a straight up mow lead, let's say, if you wanted to, and go ahead and set a time to go look at it, meet somebody with the full intentions of watermelons are $3 or the 3 for 10. Something that you're going to look at and to provide an upsell opportunity for everybody involved. Their landscape's going to look nicer, and you've got the potential to sell something other than. So, um,
I think a big part about that, we're not going to get into it today, of course, but making it easy for your customer to pay when you do have an upsell. That's a big one for
yeah,
getting that upsell, especially the bigger the upsell gets, right? Like
right.
you need to have alternate options for payment.
For payment when you do go into another direction with somebody. So, yeah, Seth, Kyle did see some big game. I think they were curious how your trip was and if you saw anything. But see, what was the biggest thing you seen? That elk, the grizzly bears. So pretty good size. Craig said, as long as the competition's meeting on site, you have to meet on site. Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, if it's, and like I said, that's its own discussion for another day. Is, the situation of rolling up and there's 2 of you there. How do you handle that? So uh, that's
How to turn that into a good thing.
yeah, how to turn that into some professional judgment. and what's the good thing to do with that, and uh, do you give the person the professional courtesy of time,
Yeah.
and which I think you do for sure. That's something we can certainly talk about. But I don't know if we accomplished a whole lot with our conversation today, really, other than I guess we did. I
I think
mean,
it's thought provoking.
yeah, it gets you thinking that it is. Hey, it is okay to go on and line and do some estimates virtually,
Yeah.
but it's also probably a better thing to do sometimes is to do some of those estimates when you need to be on site. Just again, it goes back to a lot of different things, but you know, per I want to meet the person that I'm going to be working with if they're going to. Oh God, this is really a crazy way to end this, but if they're going to be spending some decent money,
Yeah.
then it goes back to you don't appreciate the little ones. Yeah, you do. You appreciate each and every dollar that comes into your company. But there's a difference between somebody that's a $500 a year lawn application client
Yeah.
and that's all they spend versus somebody that's going to spend 5K on a lighting project.
Right.
Yeah, there is a difference.
Yeah.
And not that one's any less or more important than the other, but a lawn application is a whole lot easier application sold virtually.
Right. And I think to get a feel for your consumer, put something like this on your website, like a form fill that then you can do a virtual thing for. Like you give them that option. Would you prefer virtual or would you prefer, and then assuming that you're okay with doing the in person, of course. But then at least you can get a feel for, oh, wow, 30% of my leads that came through said they actually would prefer a virtual or vice versa.
Yeah.
So then you know where the market is headed.
Yeah. And how you need to address your company's procedures on it. Because I think really what it boils down to is close ratios. I mean, if you're closing a high enough percentage of your leads that you're comfortable with that close ratio, then I would say do it the way you're doing it. If you want to make a change, and change is generally good, even if something's working, we need to work on it sometimes. We can't get complacent and say, well, man, that's the way I did them back in 1979 or 1989 or 1999 or even 2009, 2019. I mean, you got to always be willing to step up, make some changes, make some adjustments, change the playbook up a little bit, right? I think that's very important. You know, like our buddy Purple Walrus, Aaron Walls. I mean, Indianapolis got to the line of scrimmage and changed the play right at the line. Purple Walrus. They had another play in place. So that's the question. That's the thought provoking process of today is put another play in place in your business. But that being said, we're going to hop off here. We're going to make room for King Darren Gruner as he talks about 5 solid tips to be the landscape hero for your clients. Remember, profit is not a dirty word, and we'll see you Wednesday with Richard with Toa.